Let's see here. I want to know. I want to know from you. If you're allowed to tell me, are you allowed to say what JD stands for? I think that's what most of the
Sure.
people are here to find out.
Yeah. So my birth certificate says James David Ingram, but I think my mom had a friend who went by his initials or something like that, and she thought it was really cool. And it wasn't JD, it was like PJ or something like that. But she was like, "Oh man, my son's gonna go by his initials and be really cool too."
Mm-hmm.
So I've always been JD.
And so, do you feel like this is the main reason you are so cool?
I mean, it certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Have you ever considered a career, or even just doing kind of like moonlighting as a DJ JD?
That would be clever, but I don't know, it's never, the DJ life never really spoke to me. It seems like it's a lot of standing around and staying up late, and I'm not really good at either of those things.
What you like is standing around in the burning sun in a kilt instead.
Yeah. Yes.
During the day.
Going on parades.
That's right. Well, let's dig into that. I want you to tell me, if you would, starting from the day your mother decided you would go by your initials, where did you grow up? What was your life like as lowercase JD, as the young JD, and at what point did your life encounter bagpipes? Take me that far.
Okay. So I was born in New Mexico. Most of my family's actually in the Southwest, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. But my dad was a pilot, so we traveled a lot and could pretty much live wherever there was an airport. And
like commercial
my parents,
pilots?
Yeah, he flew
Gotcha.
for Northwest and Delta and a couple other airlines over the years.
Gotcha.
And so they decided when I was still fairly young that we needed to live in Tennessee. So from the age of, I think I was 6 when we first moved to Tennessee, I lived in the Knoxville area.
And did they have family there, or did it just sound like a cool place to go?
No, they just went all over. I had an ancestor that lived in Tennessee in like the 1840s, but we have no immediate family in the region.
Gotcha. 1840s. So one of the very first white dudes in Tennessee, huh?
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty cool.
It's funny, people ask if I'm Scottish or if my dad was Scottish, whatever. And Ingram is a Scottish spelling and a Scottish name, but it took literally, and when I did my family tree, we were going back well into the 1600s before we started finding people who were immigrating.
Oh, really?
We've been American a lot longer than we were anything else.
Yeah. They were some of the first some of the trendsetters, huh?
Yeah.
That are some of the criminals that nobody wanted anywhere else.
That probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. Well, so you grew up then in Knoxville. Are you still there in the Knoxville area now?
I live in Charleston, South Carolina now. Yeah, growing up in Tennessee, it was so that's actually where I got started on bagpipes. My kind of why and why bagpipe story, which I love asking people, and I appreciate that you ask people about how they got started, because everybody's got a different one, and often the story is really entertaining.
Yeah.
But so for me it was 9/11.
Oh.
When 9/11 happened and the whole, basically the country just kind of stopped and watched in New York, and I remember seeing like the NYPD pipe band and FDNY pipe band doing services and memorials literally on the news 24/7 for weeks after that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, that's a cool instrument and a cool talent that these guys can add this, give back and add this emotion and characterize, capture kind of how the nation was feeling at the time. I was like, that's pretty cool. And at the time I was playing trumpet in the school band, and so I already had some kind of music training and musical interest. And I remember telling my mom one night, I was like, yeah, I think I want to play bagpipes. And she was like, really? All right, we'll see if we can find something.
So no
'cause
precedent, like no neighbors who played, no uncles who played.
No, didn't know any bagpipers. I don't think I'd seen bagpipes in the flesh at that point.
Oh, really?
But the Knoxville pipe band there had done something that got them in the newspaper. I don't remember what. Maybe played at a local festival or St. Patrick's Day or something. I don't know. And there was contact info, and so my dad called and was like, "Hey, can you teach my son to play bagpipes?" And the guy said, "Yes." How old is he? And I was, however old I was, like 12. And they're like, that's a fine age to start learning, but make sure he really wants to play bagpipes. Come watch a practice, because we're really just a bunch of weird old dudes. And I remember my mom saying, "Oh, he'll fit right in." That's
A bunch of weird old dudes. That's perfect for my kid.
Yeah. But so had my first lesson there in 2002, 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, you've been at it a minute then. So is that the Nashville Pipes and Drums?
Knoxville, yeah.
Knoxville,
so
my bad.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And they're still around, doing well. Good band, but I went to college in Atlanta, practiced a little bit with the Atlanta pipe band when I was there, but college was busy, so I kind of let it fall by the wayside. And then my first job out of college was here in South Carolina, and got plugged in with the Charleston pipe band.
Gotcha.
And have been here for 10 years now.
Yeah. So you played with Knoxville like through high school, basically, right?
Yeah, it's like 5-6 years total.
Gotcha. Cool, man. And so, like, during that time, you mentioned that you did play trumpet, so you had some music stuff going on. Any other hobbies? What else was taking up your time when you were a kid?
I mean, East Tennessee's got the Tennessee River and got the mountains and stuff, so I enjoyed the outdoors, and my dad was a pilot, so we still traveled a lot, but mostly I would say music has always kind of been my main hobby. I don't have any, like, I'm not a big gamer, I'm not a knitter or arts and crafts type person.
Yeah.
Mostly music.
All right, on. So once you got started with that group of weird old guys, how did your family deal with it from there on? Like, did they remain, like, okay with it? Did they get enthusiastic about it? Like, did your mom turn into a real band mom and was at every single competition, Like, how did it go with your family?
Yeah, so it was funny, my dad decided to take lessons with me. He did not really have much musical background. He had been in, like, a rock band in high school and then had taken 40 years off of music. So when he started taking lessons, I, obviously young fingers and young mind, and also actively in music classes, I was ready to compete within like 9 months to a year. And he, after a year or two, got to the point where he could play like Scott and the Brave with the band. And so he would come and do the parades and stuff, and I would compete, and Mom was tagging along to do, support both of us, and was eventually convinced to be a tenor drummer in the band, as I feel like a lot of band moms are. It seems like
classic. Yep,
that's pretty common.
That's the move.
It's funny. So at the time, our entire tenor corps was my mom and Lyric Toddkill's mom, who's you may be familiar with the name. He's played with the Sidney Frasers and St. Thomas alumni and stuff over the years. He's a good piper.
So you could change instead of calling it the midsection, you could call it the mom section.
The mom section, there you go. So both of them stuck with it until I went to college, and then since I wasn't there to anchor them to it anymore, they left the band.
Then you went to college, you mentioned you played with the Atlanta Pipe Band just a little bit, and now you're with the Charleston Pipe Band. Now I follow them on Instagram, if I'm not mistaken. They're the ones with the distinctive logo that looks like a ship, right?
Yes. Yeah, so the Charleston Band has had a fairly interesting history in I think probably it's worth going back to the first group of bagpipers that I'm aware of in Charleston, which would be in the 50s. General Mark Clark came back from World War II and was posted at the military college here in Charleston, the Citadel, and said, man, those Brits had cool bagpipes with their military units. Let's have some at ours. So he got like 4 cadets in the military school to learn to play bagpipes, probably really poorly from what I understand, and had a small bagpipe band associated with the school starting back in the 50s.
Oh, yeah.
And in the 70s, they hired Sandy Jones, who is a fairly famous bagpiper. He runs the North American Academy of Piping and Drumming, which is one of the major schools on the East Coast. He was pipe major of the U.S. Air Force pipe band when JFK died, so he led the funeral procession there. Like, pretty big name, especially on the East Coast, I think. But he was hired to be the Citadel teacher. And so I moved down to Charleston and had, over the years, I think a number of private students as well as school students. And so a decent group of bagpipers kind of developed in town. And I think over the course of the 70s and 80s, there was a couple short-lived pipe bands based in Charleston or Savannah, which is only about an hour and a half down the coast from us. And
sorry to interrupt you, JD. I just that name Sandy Jones sounded really familiar, so I was just Googling it. I know I'd seen it on the front of one of those Learn to Play Bagpipes books, one of the more popular ones that people show up to practice with, when they're first learning.
Yeah, we almost exclusively use his book here.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Of course you do.
But yeah, no, he's a very good teacher. I mean, his entire career, he was career Air Force and then was in the Air Force pipe band, and since he retired from the military, he's been a career bagpiper. But so bagpipes has been his livelihood his whole life. But yeah, great guy. And in the 90s, finally, we had kind of it was the last iteration was like the Lowlanders pipe band or something like that, of these kind of on again, off again pipe bands. And the local police chief, who is a fascinating character in his own right, his name was Reuben Greenberg. He had kind of come in and said, Charleston's going to be one of those world-class police departments like NYPD or whatever, like that people know. And of course there's an NYPD pipe band, so he wanted himself to have a pipe band too.
Yeah.
So he reached out to Sandy Jones at the Citadel, the military college, and said, can you get me every bagpiper you can and teach as many of my police officers as you can? And at the time, I think police officers could be on duty if they were at bagpipe practice or at a gig. So quite a few, I think, picked it up at that time.
I sure would.
Yeah, so through the mid-90s and into the early 2000s, we had a fairly good group of bagpipers, pipe band, that was the Charleston Police Pipes and Drums. And the Charleston Police badge actually has a sailing ship on it. It's kind of part of one of the emblems of the city of Charleston. And then in 2004 is when Sandy retired and moved to North Carolina, and he was replaced by Jim Dillahay at the Citadel and as pipe major of our band, he's currently the president of the Eastern United States Pipe Band Association, so you may have heard his name before. But he took our band to very probably top competitive levels. We went to grade 2, competed all over the country. I think they were champions in several different titles. Never got over to Scotland, I think, but throughout kind of the mid-2000s, that was a really competitive time for the band. And then Jim left the band in like 2010 to compete with City of Dunedin, which is, he had grown up in Central Florida and had learned to play.
And that would be, I'm guessing it, are you about there yet, or are you in college or so?
I came to Charleston in 2011. So gotcha. Jim left as I was coming in, and we had kind of a couple bridge years where we had a pipe major named Josh, who I think didn't really want to be the pipe major, but
so few do.
He did it because somebody had to.
Yeah, it's something they do out of duty and willingness, not so much that they want to.
After a couple years of that, I think the board got together and said, we need somebody who's got some enthusiasm for teaching people and developing as a unit. So they
Mm-hmm.
said, JD, you're going to be pipe major. And I was like, oh, crap. All right, I guess so.
Yeah. But so then
But
you were pretty fresh in the group then too.
yeah, I joined in 2011, 2012, and I was kind of an interim pipe major in fall of 14 and full time and starting at 15.
Yeah. And where, excuse me, the band website has you listed as the grade 4 pipe major. Is that still the case right now?
Yeah, so we're um, I'm the senior pipe major, and very briefly we had a grade 3 unit and had Jim Dillahay come back to be kind of an instructor and be pipe major of the grade 3 unit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was a rank and file player in grade 3 and pipe major of grade 4, and then grade 3 was hard to sustain for us, so
But you've got a grade
we're
4 and a grade 5, right?
back down to grade 4 and grade 5 now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So the duties of pipe major, what do you think? You know, nobody. Let's imagine nobody's going to listen. Tell me how you really feel.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think there's a couple different approaches to it that kind of are all needed and all need to be balanced, and it's difficult to balance them. But this is one thing I think Andy and Josh have talked about on the Chanter Rant before as well. Is are you, there's the good cop and bad cop approaches to pipe majors. So you can be the bad cop and just yell that everything's not good enough, and then lean on like your pipe sergeant to be good cop and kind of
Go patch
support
things up
people
after.
and encourage them, right?
Yeah.
You could also be like the you could flip flop it. You could have your pipe sergeant yell at people, and you be the kind of the encouraging, the example or whatever. And then there's the approach to like a mentoring or teaching pipe major, where you're always taking people aside and working through as a coach and a mentor, and
Yeah.
kind of have your pipe sergeant or whoever run the big circle, just to get people some reps on the tunes.
Right.
And I don't know which one is the best. I cycle through the three depending on the season and depending on how the band's doing.
That's how you keep your pipers and your drummers on their toes. They never know which
Yeah.
JD is going to show up to practice.
Yeah, I'm not very good at being the bad cop, but I do sometimes. I'll be the disappointed guys. That wasn't very good. Let's do it again and suck 50% less, okay?
Yeah. There you go. Let's suck less. That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you say
But-
that. I recently interviewed the pipe major and pipe sergeant for some of the bands at Wasatch District, and was just asking him specifically about that. Like, what are the dynamics? Like how do you handle sort of like who takes which responsibilities and stuff like that? And Ross and Mark, they both said very similar things. That, like, of course there are as many ways to approach this as there are people. Everybody kind of finds how to do it.
And I think my personality has always been kind of a better as a coach or a tutor. So I've always leaned towards the coaching side. And if I've got a decent enough piper that I trust them to run the band through, a couple parade sets or an MSR in my stead, and then I'll pull one or two of the problem, people who need a little extra attention off to the side, or set up a special time in practice for private lessons or whatever.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that your band has a board. The Charleston Pipe Band has a board. Does that end up being helpful to you in, like, do you feel like the system for your band is set up such that you can focus mostly on music, or do you as the pipe major end up doing a lot of email reminders, and are you also the quartermaster, and like how many hats are you switching back and forth between to run the band?
Yeah, it's waxes and wanes on how much people are able to help. It definitely, I would recommend our structure. So we have, when the police department stopped doing the bulk of our funding in 2008, basically, when everybody's budget got cut and the economy collapsed.
Yeah.
And so we reincorporated as a nonprofit organization about the time that I joined the band, and had to set up a board because that's required as for a nonprofit, which I think a lot of bands will do that, but then like the pipe major is also the president and also the quartermaster, and you've got just like you've got a treasurer and a secretary by default or something like that.
Right. But the pipe major is also like the band manager and has control of the bank account and everything.
So we were very specific to make sure that there was kind of two separate leadership structures. There's the board, which is a president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and then also the senior pipe major, the senior lead drummer, and a member at large, I think is it. And then and also the band manager, so the person who books the gigs. That's our board.
It gets you representation from kind of all facets, huh?
Right, and then if anybody, if your pipe major is also the president, then you add another member at large, just to make sure that there are still, however many it is, 7 or 8 people to kind of spread some of the work out.
Yeah.
And then the musical org structure has pipe major, drum sergeant, instructors, drum major, etc. Kind of run the gigs and the performances when we're actually doing something.
Yeah. So
currently I am senior pipe major and the vice president at the same time.
Gotcha. Well, that's pretty cool. Now, getting a little bit back into the biography here, you mentioned you've got a life partner there. Did bagpipes figure into courtship in any way? Was it a hurdle that someone had to get over, or was it an attractant, or what? How does that work out?
It's interesting that there's so many people tend to have strong opinions on the bagpipes. Playing bagpipes in high school, there were girls that thought that was the coolest thing ever, and there was girls who would not talk to me, thought I was the weirdo.
Yeah, there aren't a lot of middle ground folks.
My wife was kind of one of the few. I think she leans towards appreciating them, but she's one of the few people who's somewhere in the middle, I think.
Yeah.
Because she's actually a very talented piano player, and has great appreciation for classical music, and she's somebody that can play by ear, so she can hear a pop song on the radio and then go sit down at a piano and play it in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the way bagpipes, especially pipe band world, how structured it is and how simplistic with our 9 notes and no accidentals. Right. I think she feels a lot of times almost stifled when we try to play together. No, you can't play it in that key. We can only play in this key. So there's some, I think, annoyance there. But she does like Celtic music. I think she likes my small pipes a lot better, and listening to, if we go see an Irish style pub band or Celtic rock, like the whoever, Wicked Tinkers or Dropkick Murphys, she enjoys that more than she likes pipe band.
Yeah, pipe band is kind of an interesting animal, isn't it? I don't know how it. Maybe you have thoughts on this. If you don't feel any pressure to weigh in or anything, But isn't it funny, just especially where you have kind of plenty of exposure, both yourself having done music outside of pipe band and through your wife, to the more general musical world. Then sort of turning art into competition is just it's such an interesting thing. I often feel like we're like the sonic equivalent to figure skating. It's is this art, or are we competing? It's like football for people who don't like football. You know what I mean?
Well, and there's the DCI is Drum Corps International for marching band people is a very similar culture. Maybe even more hardcore than pipe band. Playing trumpet through high school and college, I was in marching bands, and a large number of people that I played with would do DCI over the summer with some of the corps around the country, and travel for contests, and be working on whatever their competition set was for the season. same as pipe bands do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. So, right now in your life, JD, who do you think is your biggest fan? If you're going to get your pipes out, who in your life is going to be most excited, or who in
My
your life is
biggest
most
fan.
likely to ask you to get them out?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Uh, so, I don't know. There's a couple different times that I play that I think different people appreciate. So, one of I mentioned I have small pipes. I actually have two sets of small pipes. The newer set is a set I got of the Fred Morrison
Yeah, let's nerd
bellows
out about
blown.
equipment. Tell me all about both sets. I don't think anybody is going to be bothered by hearing details. This is I
Yeah.
like this stuff.
Kind of a cool, I guess a little emotional story. My grandmother and grandfather were doing poorly right in like 2019, 2020. And I think my grandmother probably knew she had one Christmas left, and so she asked my mom what I wanted, and at this point I'm like 30, so I'm, like, you've kind of come full circle from wanting a bunch of toys to like, I don't know, I guess I need a new pair of socks or maybe a
Yeah,
nice bottle of scotch or something like that. And I
yeah.
was like, the only toy I really want is I've been eyeing a set of these small pipes, bellows blown small pipes, and but they're crazy expensive. They're like twice as much as what my Highland pipes were.
Right. Yeah.
And she was like, money's no object. I don't got time to spend it all. Let's go for it. So my grandmother bought me a set of these Fred Morrison bellows blown. It's got the 4 drones, so I can play, and I've got a chanter in A and a chanter in D. So kind of the combo set, which is great for sessions with different, guitar and stuff like that. I can kind of swap around, and it's a really cool set of pipes. I've really enjoyed learning to use the bellows. And so I wrote her a tune as a thank you, and played it for her over Zoom, because that was the pandemic had hit by this point, and
Right.
nobody could go visit her. And she actually passed the next day. It was like
Wow,
it was
really?
the last song she heard.
Wow.
So that was kind of a big thing. But whenever I play my Fred Morrison small pipes, whatever I'm playing, I think my mom really loves just to listen to me play my small pipes, because I think it reminds her of her mom.
I don't doubt it. I guess that's one set that's never going to be sold to get another set, huh?
Right. Nope. But my other set of small pipes was one I got fairly early in my piping journey. I got a set of the John Walsh shuttle pipes,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I know that's that. Yeah.
which are, I mean, those are ones that people have asked. Oh, I'm looking into getting small pipes. What should I get? And I kind of say, if you're looking for small pipes that are gonna be basically just practice Highland bagpipes that are quieter and less air, that's a good way to go, because
Yeah.
they're cheaper, they're low maintenance, they're fairly reliable. I don't think they sound as good as my Fred Morrison pipes, or but they're very approachable and an easy transition from the Highland pipes. So
Yeah.
that's what I would recommend for anybody who's looking for kind of a set of practice pipes.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Have you? I wonder. Have you noticed? Like, I guess I probably could research this to figure it out more myself. But like, I've tried figuring it out. Does Fred Morrison have a set of signature small pipes, and aside from that, his signature reel pipes, REEL?
Yes.
And then,
Yes.
so then, are those reel pipes more like border pipes?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
His real pipes have the conical chanter instead of the parallel chanter, so it has
Gotcha.
that Highland pipe sound, and it has I think it uses the same bag, same bellows, but it's got the chanter's conical, and the drones are a little louder to keep up with the volume.
And now he's pushing out those uilleann pipes as well.
Yeah, so I think he's got a half set and a full set that are available.
That's next on the list, right?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I had a friend that was down giving a workshop for the band, and tried out her practice set of uilleann pipes, and it's a different beast for
Whole
sure.
different thing, right? Well, speaking of marching band, I've heard a lot of my piper friends, and just reading on Bob Dunsire and stuff like that, just folks talking about going from highland pipes to uilleann pipes, that it's something like going from marching band to jazz band. Like, yeah, it's ostensibly the same thing, but very different.
Right.
Maybe similar equipment, but a whole different philosophy behind it.
Yeah.
So beautiful story. I wonder how would you feel, JD? We've got some time for like post work before this would go out. Would you be interested in throwing together a even just a simple recording of the tune, and I could take the episode out on it?
Sure.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun. We'll do that. And this is not the end of the interview. If you can stick around, I just figured I'd ask you real quick before I forgot about it.
Yeah, no problem.
That'd be awesome. So, what about your life right now? Is pipe band and small pipes, of course, is bagpiping kind of the thing? I know that you recently became the voice of the Weekly Drone, right?
I did, yeah. So bagpipes has become most of my life outside of work. After taking over as pipe major, one of the first things that I did was our band had always enjoyed a pretty good relationship with the Citadel, the school pipe band here in town. But I think less and less people were graduating and staying in town. More and more seemed to be taking military commissions or moving somewhere else. And so it kind of became unreliable as a feeder program. And so I instituted at rehearsals, the first hour is for lessons. And if you're, so we have typically 3 pipers that are teaching small group lessons, 2 or 3, maybe up to 5 chanter students at a time. And then any pipers, kind of our beginning grade 5 band type pipers, will have their first hour of practice chanter work, that's the first hour of practice. And that, I guess, starting in 2015 or 2016, now we're at the point where that's starting to pay dividends. We've got a fairly fresh, every year we got 1 or 2 pipes, or new pipers taking up the instrument, which is good, because it's just so hard to find new bagpipers. Like, sometimes you get lucky and somebody moves to town, but very rarely does somebody just show up and be like, oh yeah, like I used to play with whoever, Wasatch and District, and just moved to town and want to play with your local grade 4 band. Yeah. Yeah. Like, that doesn't happen. So, and so you kind of got to grow them yourself.
It does seem like that's kind of the cycle you see bands go through, right? Like, there will be an education program that's functioning well and it's paying dividends, and then as the pipe band kind of builds up and gets bigger and bigger, and it moves up through the competitive ranks, the focus shifts to the high competition band, and sort of like the feeder program can often die away. And that's often, it seems like that's the trail that leads to a band dissolving eventually, or having to start again from ground zero.
Right. So that's been between leading the band as a band and playing all the gigs and everything like that. I do a fair amount of teaching as well on the side, and then that takes up a lot of time.
Is that exclusively for the band in that group program, or do you also teach private instruction for money?
I do a couple private lessons typically. I've had some students over the years who, for one reason or another, didn't want to be part of the band program. I had a regular student for a while who had played bagpipes as a college student at the Citadel back in like the 50s or 60s, however old he was. So and then he stopped after that. He wasn't very good back then because I don't think they really had proper instruction.
Sure.
And then had tried to pick it back up in like the early 2000s or late 90s, and was of the age where it was not coming very quickly. So we would have lessons, but I think it was almost as much for camaraderie as it was for actual musical instruction. Because I worked with him for probably 5 years, and we got to Scott and the Brave. We did a lot of slow airs. He actually enjoyed me. It was kind of fun. He would ask, I heard this pipe band doing, whatever, do you think you can get the music for that? And so I would go listen to that recording and then just arrange it for him.
Yeah.
But we did everything from like one of the big ones was the Top Gun theme.
Oh yeah.
He heard a pipe band covering that, and he was like, "Oh, can you arrange that?" So we worked it out. We did a song by ABBA, and we did a song. What did we do? What's the really Waltzing Matilda?
Oh sure, yeah.
The Aussies all love. We
Aussies
did that
love
one.
that
We did
one,
a couple. So that was kind of a fun private student we had for a while, and then right now I've got a father and son pair that wanted to take lessons together, so I teach them together.
You see a little bit of your own experience in them.
Yeah, it is really funny, and that's been another thing is watching how people learn and learning how people learn. Because we've got the son has kind of that typical 11-year-old low attention to detail, but his fingers are really able to adapt. Once he figures out what he's supposed to be doing, he does it. And then the dad can probably describe better what he's supposed to be doing, but his fingers won't do it.
Yeah.
And taking different approaches on how to get them to do the right thing.
So pipes have taken over your life. So playing and teaching. Are you a gigging piper too? Do you pick up funerals, weddings, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean Charleston is a fairly popular wedding destination in the region. You know, they've got that's where what's his face, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively got married here in town. It was one of my first, so that was actually kind of funny. We were supposed to have a gig where they were playing, and our gig was canceled, or where they were getting married. Our gig was canceled with no explanation, and then the next day on the news we saw,
but you
Gossip
didn't get
Girl
hired to play
and
the wedding instead?
No, I did not get to play their wedding. But Bette Midler was a guest at their wedding and actually showed up at my work because she was interested. I work at the Boeing airplane factory, and she was interested in seeing the airplanes. So
oh, really? That's pretty cool. Hey, what does your dad think of you working on airplanes? Is that exciting to him?
Yeah, I think he thinks it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
It was funny, the first family day we were allowed to bring our families. I brought my parents, and he was both surprised. I don't want to say worried, but there were things that he was like, "Oh wow, they really get away with that," and then there was things that he was like, "Oh wow, that's pretty cool over there." Yeah. Right. And this is not to disparage the Boeing company. We take very good care of our planes, and the airplanes are very safe to fly on, I promise.
For both the FBI agents who are listening and the Boeing undercover agents who are listening, JD is a loyal tax-paying Boeing employee. He's all above board. So
no, I mean I do. It's a good company for sure. I've been as much of an airplane geek as I have been a bagpipe geek for probably just as long.
But not a pilot yourself?
Not a pilot
yet.
Yeah, I don't know my dad became a pilot because he was in the Air Force, and the Air Force taught him to fly, and so it was easy to get a job doing something he had a license for already.
Yeah.
Getting the license is a lot of time and effort
money, right?
And money, yeah. That I don't really have right now, and then if I did manage to get a job as a pilot, I'd have the pilot's schedule, which would be keeping me away and missing gigs and missing practice and everything
all
like
this bagpipe stuff.
Right. So I'll work on them from the ground for now.
Right on. Well, what about other gigs? Have you had any crazy or funny or memorable gigs that come to mind when I say where are some cool places or situations you played in?
So, I mean, I get a lot of random gigs in town. Weddings are my favorite. It's probably what I do the most of. And definitely Charleston being a wedding destination, there's times where I have weddings almost back to back. Literally, actually, the Saturday after St. Patrick's Day this year, I left one of our St. Patrick's Day gigs and had 2 weddings
Wow.
that evening. And when they were asking, like, oh, are you free on March 19th? I'm like, no, I'm not free on March 19th. All right, maybe what time is it? Maybe. And then when the second one asked, I'm like, absolutely not. Actually, where is it? It turned out to be next door to the first one. I was like, all right,
wow.
I'll just walk over. If I play their ceremony, I can play your reception.
Wow. A harvest day for JD the Piper there.
Yeah, that was rough. But I don't know. 2 of the weirdest gigs I've ever played. The first one was actually a St. Patrick's Day. So myself and another piper in the band, we both found that we were getting a ton of requests on the side, and we said, all right, tell you what, we're gonna. A lot of times, you go to a bar or whatever, you play for 30 minutes to an hour. And then if you've got an hour to kill, like, what do? You just sit there? Do you go try to, like, join in the other band? So we combined all of our gigs, and we managed to get them so they were staggered, where we had gigs almost continuously from, like, noon to midnight.
Very smart.
Yeah, and then it was also nice because if you're both there playing, you can take a break while he's playing, or tag out at the gig. So it worked out to be a pretty good deal. But the last gig of the evening was the weirdest one. So we were hired by a dance club in town, and all we were told is we are introducing their guest DJ.
Okay, what are we talking, like a place where old people go to learn salsa after they've retired, that kind of dance club?
Where college age people go to drink too much and grind on each other.
Oh, that kind of dance club.
That kind of club. Yeah, it was a very loud, very strobe lighty type place, and it's actually, once I got inside the door, I could not hear my own chanter playing. Is how loud it was.
That is really loud.
But
the one and only gig where you'll have staff coming and asking if you can play louder.
Yeah, right. The guest DJ. So when she showed up, we were like, okay, so like, what's the deal? Why are we introducing the guest DJ? And she was like, oh, like, so glad you guys came. I was a Highland dancer as a little girl, and I thought it'd be really cool to be introduced by bagpipes, especially this close to St. Patrick's Day. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. And then we started seeing the posters and ads for her and why she was a famous DJ, and it turned out that she was also a pornographic actress, and we were both kind of just like, oh, all right.
Probably also
Okay.
An excellent DJ. Let's not
Yeah.
let's not suggest that her popularity is only because of the adult film industry. Surely her DJ skills are paramount, right?
I'm sure they were great. We did not stick around. We played 79's Farewell to Gibraltar up to the DJ stand. I think somebody handed us a shot and saluted our DJ and headed out the door.
Yeah.
But
was this? I mean, you were probably married at the time, right?
Yes.
One of these situations, like, sweetie, I'm just going to play the pipes. I promise, I'm only playing the pipes. I'm in and out.
See, I didn't even know what it was until afterwards, or until I guess when we were there. Yeah, I didn't know who she was. I didn't care. We that was like the 8th or 9th gig in a row.
Yeah. That
day.
Yeah, just dazed at that point, I'm sure.
Yeah. But that was a pretty funny one. And then the other really awkward gig I had, this was a solo. This one was fairly recent. Was for an MMA fight.
Oh, cool.
And which is I'd never been to one in person, but it was full on, like, in the octagon cage, and I got there, and it was not a pro, not Vegas level, not UFC. It was like. Reminded me more of. Did you see the movie the Peanut Butter Falcon?
I didn't see it. No.
So the premise of the Peanut Butter Falcon is, what's his face? Shia LaBeouf makes friends with a special needs kid who wants to be a pro wrestler or something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah. I saw previews for this. I didn't see the movie.
Yeah, so they go on this big adventure to, like, backwoods North Carolina, out in the hills, and everybody's, like, dirty and muddy and barefoot and whatever, and show up at this wrestling match, and this special needs kid gets to be a wrestler or whatever for the day. But that kind of backwoods walking through a bunch of people in ripped camo jeans, smoking their cigarette sticks or whatever.
It's like you get the
and
feeling
then I
that,
show.
after this fight, everybody's heading over to like the rooster fighting ring down in
Yes,
the alley
exactly.
or something.
And I show up in a kilt and my fancy vest and jacket, and I just don't fit in at all. And the promoter who had hired me, I guess he wanted me to play at the halftime because they were honoring a guy who was like a wounded warrior, who had done some like training for wounded warriors and like help people get back on their feet or whatever. It was kind of a cool thing.
Yeah.
But until halftime, he was like, "Hey, I got you a VIP seat," and so I was sitting ringside between the med techs who were there to like make sure somebody was okay if they got a concussion, the girls in the bikinis who hold up the signs about what round it is, and the special guest VIP who was the what is his name? Diego Sanchez, who's he won the first UFC like welterweight title. And I was just like, and here's me in my kilt and bagpipes, and like, all right, here we go.
That's awesome. When you said you got hired to play for an MMA fight, immediately I was like, oh, Conor McGregor, awesome,
It was several layers below Conor McGregor.
A few layers, yeah.
But
not quite to that tier, huh? So after a couple of gigs like this, at what point does your wife start saying like, "Sweetie, I don't know about these bagpipe gigs. Like, if it's not a porn star DJ, then it's the crazy backwoods bikini girl fight. Like what's next? What's going to be next for my piper husband?"
Yeah, who knows? I definitely getting to the point where I've started asking for more money or straight up turning down gigs that aren't like in-town weddings at churches I'm familiar with, but
and probably asking for a few more details too, I would imagine, huh?
Yeah.
Well, we live and learn, don't we?
Yeah, for sure.
That's awesome. So when you're doing these gigs, do you, like, how do they come to you? Do you have they usually come through the band, or do you have some online presence?
So there's a mixture. I've got a Facebook page that I don't update nearly as much as I should, but I've gotten a few gigs that way. I've got a profile on Gig Salad, which I would recommend as a. It's a nice gigging site because they have the free option where they take a cut of your bookings as opposed to charging you like $30 or $40 a month, and then maybe you get booked and maybe you don't.
Right.
And so I found that, especially with the way bagpipes work, you get, kind of a wedding season where you'll have 10 gigs, and then St. Patrick's Day where you'll have 10 gigs, and then nothing the rest of the year. So
yeah,
I like that. And then the band does get a fair amount of gigs that way, and we try to pass them out fairly equitably. I don't take the pick of the litter there.
Yeah, I'm sure you're probably in a position to be especially careful about that. It wouldn't look good if you had the VP and pipe major taking all of the paying gigs that came through the band.
Right.
Now you told me about your small pipes. Let's geek out a little more. I want to hear about your highland pipes. What's going on there? What kind of pipes do you play? What kind of chanters?
So I am still playing my first set of pipes. I got
you and me both, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Even if it is broke, fix it and keep playing it.
Yeah, I got my first set was a McCallum. I think they were the Blackwood 2s that they were offering at the time. So they got the kind of imitation mounts and everything, and started off on easy drones, and as I learned to strike in better and wrestle with those things, I eventually switched over to the MG reeds that are made in the same factory there in Kilmarnock. And I have pretty much stuck with MGs ever since. I think right now I've got the originals, but I've got a pair of the White Mambas ready to. Those are my on-deck drone reeds.
I've seen those White Mambas. I was recently shopping for drone reeds. I just barely changed for the first time in 20 years. This is my first time ever changing drone reeds. Can you believe that?
Wow.
I've had the same drone reeds since I started playing. So
same set or same brand?
Same set.
Wow.
Same tongues, same bridles, same hemp holding them in my drones. Okay, not
That's
the same
impressive.
hemp. The hemp has been changed, but everything else the same.
I don't know. I've found that mine get a little less steady every, I don't know, 6 to 10 years. So
Yeah.
I think I'm on my third set now, or fourth
That
set.
that was the problem. These finally got to the point where I couldn't rely on them anymore. I didn't want to be striking it at a funeral and not knowing what was going to happen, so
Mm-hmm.
had to move on. But
And then as far as chanters, I currently am mostly playing. I've got my band chanter, which our band was the first one to get outfitted with Ruddy McClellan's new Elevation chanter.
yeah, I just got one of those.
Yeah, they're nice. I like it.
Yeah.
And then I've got for weddings where I have to play with traditional instruments like a pipe organ or an orchestra. I've got a Campbell Bagpipes tunable chanter with the little screw on the outside that you adjust your reed. Which that's been kind of fun to play around with. It's a nice little gimmick. I don't know that I would want to do it for the band because I think I would worry that I would have too many people moving their reeds around.
Yeah.
But it is nice, when you're chasing a specific pitch like Concert 440, to be able to adjust the high hand on the fly.
Yeah. Now, are you able to get that? So we messed with a sample of one of those when we were setting up Garden Valley Pipe Band, just thinking the same thing, like, would this be useful as a band? And then we kind of decided, like, probably not for the band. But I haven't looked at them since then. Do you have one that is already set up to play at 440, and then you can adjust from there?
Yeah, they took a McCallum B flat and cut the top off and put their little proprietary thread thing on it, and so that's what I've got.
So you can move between concert what is it 460, 466 for B flat and
467 I think if you're for your A reading A on the tuner,
right,
and is your concert 440 for a B flat.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't realize it had that much range that you could move between the two. That's pretty cool. That makes it.
It doesn't go between concert pitch and B flat pitch. It helps me chase. If I find that I'm 4 or 5 hertz sharp, I can chase that.
I see. You're doing your
around.
setup to get close to it, and then that's just getting you better in the moment kind of shift.
Yeah, I found there's been times where I'll be playing a bride down the aisle with Highland Cathedral. I get to that first high A and I'm like, ooh, that's a little flat, and I'll just reach over real quick and can make that adjustment literally walking down the aisle.
Man, that I wish. That is a really good point. I often kind of make my tape not too tight, not too sticky, so that if I have to, I can kind of slide it. In that kind of situation.
I would be nervous about it. It's so humid here; it slides anyways.
Oh yeah, it's a wild way. It's definitely not. It's not the ideal way to do things, but that's the way. That's the best option I've had because I hadn't really thought about using it that way. Because of the way that we looked at the sample, I've only really thought about it as tuning up in a circle. But those on the fly, you play as the guests show up at the funeral, but then you stand in the sun for a while and strike in for Amazing Grace, and there's a problem. Just being able to reach up and twist that's really attractive.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I've got set up right now. I haven't done solo contests as a bagpipe solos in a year or so I'm kind of between solo chanters. But those are the ones that I'm actively playing.
Yeah, right on. Have you being not necessarily a native of South Carolina, but having lived there for a while, is there a strong sense of people having ideas about which one is the superior Carolina? Is there a lot of South Carolina pride? You might do that up in North Carolina, but here in South Carolina things are better. Or do the Carolinas get along great?
I find more so we poke fun at each other's barbecue.
Oh, interesting. Is it what is it, vinegar versus mustard, or what's the...
Yeah, North Carolina, so you really have kind of 3 barbecues. You've got mustard, which is mostly South Carolina, especially the low country. You've got vinegar, which is kind of the North Carolina lower space. And then I think both, in the mountains of both, kind of start to blend into that, ketchup based, similar to what you probably get at the store across the country.
Things always go sideways in the mountains, don't they? No
Yeah.
matter where you are.
But yeah, that's more so people will ask, oh, I'm looking to move into the Carolinas. Where should we go? Well, what do you want? You've got beaches, you've got mountains, you've got like Charlotte's a fairly big city, or Raleigh. You got
And you also
everything
have
in between.
barbecue
Farmland.
preferences to think about.
But do you like mustard-based
Right,
barbecue, or
that's
do
the
you like
main thing.
vinegar-based barbecue?
That's the main deciding factor.
Because if you like vinegar barbecue, you better stay up on the other side of that line.
Yeah. Don't even bring it down. Do you have, having done a lot, doing a lot of gigs, not only with your pipe band but also by yourself? Have you developed any kind of solid pre-performance ritual that you find is like useful to make sure you're ready to go and stuff like that?
As a soloist or as a band?
Maybe both. I don't know. Anything come to mind, like tips and tricks, things that you're like, I'm never making that mistake again, or I always do this to make sure I don't get into that situation.
Yes. So one thing I have made the mistake, I think, twice ever, and will never again, is forgetting bits of your uniform. So definitely just keep one of everything in a bag. I've got a spare pair of hose and spare pair of whatever, but I always have at least one pair, one tie, one belt in a bag. And so I toss the bag if I'm going for especially a gig that's far away and I'm not going to get dressed till I get there. Just make sure the whole bag is in the car.
Yeah.
Because there was one gig I showed up with no hose, and I was fortunate to find a Dick's Sporting Goods nearby and went and bought some baseball socks real quick.
Had time for that.
Yeah, and then one gig, actually it was a band contest, I showed up without my kilt.
What?
And
what? That's
of
a big
everything.
one.
I had everything except the kilt, and there was fortunately a kid that was just a little bit skinnier than me that was not competing with us, but was in the band that day. And so at contest time, he switched into his shorts, and I had to suck in real tight to get his kilt on. It's like needed one extra inch.
Yeah. Wonder if you feel like that helped or hindered your bag inflation capabilities.
I think we won that day, so
Hey.
it certainly didn't hurt.
Yeah.
So making sure you've got your stuff together is definitely a big part of it. I always try to show up an hour ahead of time and kind of walk the ground, walk the space, get a kind of visual picture in my head about where I'm going to be playing, where my cue is going to be coming from, and all that. Making sure you're in the right headspace and you're not tired, you're not. You got caffeine if you need it. You're not hungry. You got whatever.
Yeah.
I
don't know about
several
if you
people
need it with caffeine. I'm pretty sure caffeine is just like a constant necessity for any performance.
Yeah, most people, I guess, are probably fairly addicted at this point. But one tip I've heard from multiple people is, a lot of times I'll grab like a protein bar, but 2 or 3 different pipe majors have recommended bananas. As like a slow burning, accessible sugar, but not like a candy bar kind of. And so that's one that Stuart Little was actually, I think, the first person I heard say he has a banana before he competes.
I won't even question it then. If Stuart Little said that he like licked the sidewalk before he competed, I'd just go ahead and do it. So whatever he says.
But yeah, so I figure, I don't know, I don't think I've actually tried to like do specifically, like consciously made the decision to have a banana before a gig, but I might try that at some point.
That sounds like solid advice. Are you currently working on any tunes or working through any tune books that, like do you have any musical projects right now?
I've been, I don't know, when the pandemic first hit and our everybody's whole schedule was totally thrown up in an upheaval, I was doing a lot of stuff. I played through Fred Morrison's first book, Terry Tully's first book. I bought like 3 or 4 different books that I had seen bits and pieces of, but never actually bought the book. And so I bought the book and played all the way through for a couple of different ones.
You're some kind of psychopath who has actually played through the pipe books that you have, huh?
Yeah.
You're not,
Well, yeah, that's why when
you're
I
not
would
like
show
most of us
up,
with like dozens of books that we've maybe looked at one or two tunes inside of each.
but I mean, those first like 2 months or 3 months in the middle summer of 2020, I didn't have anywhere else to go, so
Yeah.
I'd sit there with my practice chanter and spend like 3 hours playing through all the tunes, and if I liked it, I'd highlight the title and I'm like,
Hmm.
all right, I'll come back to this one later. Um, and then with the band at that time, we moved rehearsal onto Zoom for about a year, and we did, since we didn't have any gigs really to prepare for, we played through I think it was the College of Piping published a list of like the essential bagpipe tunes that everybody should know, like Scotland the Brave and Highland Laddie and whatever else, and there was a couple easy Strasbays and reels, and so we just played every single one for that was every meeting that we'd go through it. I'd play it, and we'd kind of play it around the table, around the virtual table, and that was our
Right.
rehearsals there for a while.
No, that's a cool idea.
Um,
Next
so
pandemic. I'm putting that on
I
the list for the next time there's a pandemic.
yeah. Yeah, but I mean, that I think it was taking in so much music. Oh, another one I did was the Lowland and Border Pipers Society Blue Book. I got that
Oh,
one
yeah.
and played through that. Yeah, played through a lot over the course of like 2020 and 2021, and now I'm just kind of taking a breather.
Yeah. Do you have any favorite individual pipers or pipe bands or trad groups that include bagpipes to listen to? Any favorites that you listen to a lot or that you're excited about right now?
That's a good question. I probably should have
I mean, highland or
there,
small pipe or
yeah,
anything.
there's several. Um, I I think so. I'm a big fan of Fred Morrison. I really like listening to him.
Yeah.
And I definitely, when I have a student, it's like, what kind of bagpiper do you want to be? Is your goal just to get to where you can play Amazing Grace at church, and you never want to be any further than that? That's fine. Do you want to play in a pipe band? Like, have you seen bands and parades? Did you watch the Dropkick Murphys? Did you what do you want to be? And so I'll say, go listen to a couple different things. One of your required listens is definitely Fred Morrison. One would, and a lot of times I'll toss in like Ross Ainsley or somebody like that as similar examples. That there was a track that Rab had on his radio program. I don't know, maybe a couple months ago for the first time. That was Ross Ainsley's. Was it like Wisdom in the Chaos or something like that? And it's the one that starts with his teacher describes Cantarock and then starts singing it in Cantarock, and then it like fades over to Ross playing it. It's got that cool like minor thing where he does the cross-fingered C natural, and then it breaks from like Cantarock, pibroch into like a hornpipe that's in the same key, and it's the coolest track. If you haven't heard it, listen to it.
Right, that's on his Vana album.
Yeah.
That's got that cool twisted tree on the cover.
Right, yeah, so I had never heard that until Rab played it on the show, like, I don't know, however it was, like 2-3 months ago.
Yeah.
And there's a, who's the other one?
No pressure. Like, definitely don't feel like under pressure to know exactly what these people's names are and stuff. Like, I have messed up enough times on misidentifying which group played which tune or which band made which album and stuff like that on here, that you are, no matter what, you can't mess up too badly by comparison. So you're gonna look great no matter what. So if you're like, I heard this one, can't remember what their name is, or you mispronounce or something, it's no big deal.
I've definitely been listening to a lot more in the Irish tradition, I think, lately. There's a local kind of folk band that they don't actually have pipes. They've got a whistle player, and sometimes they'll do uilleann pipes that is pretty good. And they're called Moonlight Ale, but they're a good group to listen to.
A local group there?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
So I try to catch their gigs whenever possible, and there's a local session group that's mostly whistles and accordion and concertina and maybe a guitar or a borin sometimes.
You ever go to sessions with a whistle or some small pipes?
So I started trying to take my my shuttle pipes back in like 2019, and 2020 was going to be the year that I was like, all right, I'm gonna like try to make at least 6 sessions, and of course I made one, and then they were canceled for the next 2 years.
2020 was going to be my year for so many things.
But I did get going between that time. I got my Fred Morrison pipes, and I got a penny whistle that I've been able to work up a couple tunes on. And so my band, a couple of us have kind of taken that as a side hobby, and we had a recent concert just last month where we had two numbers on small pipes. One was all small pipes in A, just playing a hornpipe and jig, and then the other one was a mixture of small pipes in D, whistle, guitar, borin, and we kind of threw this whole thing together, and we did, what did we play? Star of the County Down, Gary Owen, and Steamboat as a little medley. That was a lot of fun.
How many small pipes in A did you get together in that first one?
4 or 5.
Oh,
I think
awesome.
actually one got COVID that week, so I think we had 4 on stage.
I've never had a chance to play small pipes in person with that large of a group. I've done like some online like instruction stuff where like everybody mutes themselves and you play along with the instructor, but never in a group. That sounds like it'd be fun.
Yeah, it was. So we actually have locally here the second Sunday of every month. The main shopping district in the center of town closes down to vehicular traffic, and it's pedestrian only. And they invite local music groups to come play for tips, and as long as it's acoustic.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're always a little leery about the highland pipes because that's acoustic, but
might as well be amplified.
Yeah, but they're down for small pipes whenever we want to, and so we've done a couple times, 5 or 6 times, where the band will come, and a significant number of us have over the years kind of seen, I want to go do Second Sunday, so they'll get themselves a set of, most of us have shuttle pipes. I think there's a set of fireside pipes and maybe 2 or 3 sets of traditional like lowland style small pipes with the 4 drones across your shoulder.
Right. I love seeing those fireside pipes. They're just like baby highland pipes. I think they're so cool.
Yep.
Now, I've been thinking a lot about whistles lately, and I've got an interview lined up with a whistle instructor. I'm curious, do you feel like you've got a lot out of learning the whistle? Like, I've been trying to like talk to people who play pipes and whistle and figure out like what's the value here, like, because I feel like pipers who only pipe tend to get to this point where like they'd like to expand a bit, but it's hard to figure out what to do. And I feel like whistling is a pretty obvious great option. What do you think about whistling at this point?
Yeah, I think the biggest con for me has been, one, it's very easy to lean back on highland repertoire, and not try to learn new stuff and get nervous when stuff goes into the second octave or third octave even.
Yeah.
And 2, it starts to develop a bad habit about false fingering, leaving that bottom hand open. Because anything with your top hand on the whistle, your bottom hand is open, except for I think one of the accidentals. So I found myself like false fingering more, and it's not a problem I've ever really had. But it is definitely fun. Some of the tunes that have been like an Irish tune or even like a fiddle tune that has been arranged for highland pipes, and therefore you've had to kind of condense some of the notes, and you don't have that high B or high C, and or you have to change, like Morrison's jig. First part works fine. Second part jumps mostly into the second octave, and for it to work on the highland pipes, you actually have to have a key change, which frustrates my wife to no end because she's used to playing it on piano in the same key for both parts, and so being able to play it on whistle has been. That's fun.
It's been good for your marriage.
Yeah, it has certainly helped soothe some marital woes there.
So that's one more point I'll add to the list of reasons why pipers should learn whistle. It'll save your relationship.
Save your relationship.
Now, if money were no object, what would you do? What equipment would you get? Where would you travel? Piping related. If you had a blank check, what would be top of your list?
That's a good one. I think I would be torn between getting a set of the McClellan like the kind of a new set of McClellans. I really love some of the ones he's done with, especially some of the exotic woods.
Oh man,
Like
yeah.
some of his hand engraving are really.
If anybody's not following them on Instagram, it's worth it. It's got some pretty stuff.
Yeah, he did one with like a Mexican ebony wood that was really pretty, and there was one that was made or inlaid with staves of like Glenfiddich cask or something like that. That was really cool. So I could see myself, if somebody wrote me a blank check, that would be a strong consideration. Would definitely consider getting into uilleann pipes if time and money were no object, and I had the schedule ability to work on uilleann pipes. But as crammed as I am right now, I don't want to drop $2,000 to $3,000 on a half set or a full set that I could barely play.
Yeah.
Hard to say what else I would look at. I like those the ones that Stuart Little and McCallum did together, the McRae's. I would be curious about those, and I would be curious about the Wallace bagpipes. They've got some cool stuff out as well.
Yeah.
I'd probably have to do some more research before I figure out exactly how I was going to spend my money, though.
Yeah.
Would upgrade my uniform for sure. Some of my stuff's getting worn out, and it's not worn out enough to really toss it yet. But you know how it goes. Like, there's some spit stains on my vest that I can't get out anymore.
Yeah. Would you just get the band tartan, or do you have a tartan that you really like that you'd love to have a kilt in?
I have 3 kilts in my closet right now. The first personal kilt I got, the Ingram is a sept of the Calhoun clan.
Hey.
Spelled
That's my my son's middle name is Calhoun because that was my on my mom's side. That's just like you, like my ancestors are American within any like reasonable stretch, and like even beyond that, it's like, well, I'm as much Mexican as I am Scottish, but I play bagpipes, so let me just focus on one ancestor, and that's one of the names that comes up when I focus in that direction.
Got you. Yeah, so I've got a Calhoun kilt because of the Ingram connection that I can't actually trace all the way to Scotland, but it's presumably connected somewhere there, and it's a pretty kilt.
Yeah, that's a very pretty tartan. I like that one a lot.
And then when I moved away from Knoxville, my mom actually bought the Knoxville, my band kilt from Knoxville, so that's ancient Mackenzie, which is nice because it's a nice shade of green, so it's a good one to play for St. Patrick's gigs.
Yeah.
And then Charleston wears the City of Charleston police tartan, which was another, when we had a bottomless police budget, the police chief commissioned a custom tartan for us, and so we've probably seen online kind of that royal blue, purple, police blue with black, silver, and gold, which is a pretty tartan, but it's expensive as all get out to try to get.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, of course I'm not dictating, but I can imagine the band, like reaching a point where enough of them have worn out that it's like, all right, guys, maybe we should think about like Henderson Gray or Royal Stewart or something that's more available.
Yeah, we got to a point about 5 years ago where the people who have had, were long timers in the band and had theirs the entire time, and especially ones who come to a lot of gigs, were starting to look pretty rough. And so for 5 years now, we've replaced 4 kilts a year, and we kind of just have like a priority list. Like, all right, you two guys, your kilts look terrible, and then we're going to buy like 2 middle-sized kilts for students or whoever's coming up that might need a kilt.
Yeah.
So I think we've got a good approach to it for right now, but we have to buy, when you have a custom kilt, it's you buy the material and then you buy the kilt. So we're looking at anywhere depending on between $600 and $800 a kilt.
Oof. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is a strong distinctive look that the pipe band has, so it may well be worth it. And it's got good history too.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. What else? We could fade into that tune now. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
I didn't really come prepared with anything specific. I had thought about. I would be curious to hear your opinion on uh, teaching or developing a band, because you've helped set up a band, and um, I don't know how much you recruit versus teach privately versus. You mentioned you're familiar with the Sandy Jones book.
Mm.
What's your approach to teaching?
Well, I can tell you that Garden Valley Pipe Band, the vision with it from the beginning was it's an educational foundation first, right? Like it's organized like many pipe bands as a 501c3, but specifically as an educational one. Um, and so that's kind of from its beginning. The idea was, if nothing else, we will always be providing um, instruction, like classes, to the community. And if we don't have enough people to field a competition band, we're going to keep teaching, And part of the philosophy behind that was, if we keep teaching, we'll always have a band, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's my thought too.
yeah, so that's
What's the method you teach? You use
oh
the like. Uh,
yeah, it was for a while, for the first couple years, it could get really, it could get what the burnout could be crazy, right? Because you'd have the same two or three people who would show up every week to teach for a whole hour before practice, and after a while that gets hard. And it was like, you never know when a new student's going to show up, so then each one of those two or three people had like 4 or 5 students, and each of them was in a different place. And so it's like, oh, and they would show up with different books, right? And so it's like, well, I'm teaching this one out of the Highland tutor, and I'm teaching this one out of the the who knows what book that they got from from the Middle East and stuff like that, right?
yeah,
And so it was so scattered. So what we've got to at this point, and I like the system we have right now, is one thing that we did. It took us like a year and a half, but we actually developed our own book. That's pretty simple. Like, it's intended to be used with an instructor. It's not like one that you could sit down and read by yourself and go all the way through. But it's out there available for free and everything. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. If anybody's putting together a band education program, then feel free to use it. But and this is just for piping.
Yeah.
We're working on something for drumming now too. But once we had that book set up, then we were able to split the instruction in it up into 3 sections. There's like a beginner, an intermediate, and an advanced. And that is between starting on your practice chanter to being able to get onto your highland pipes with some common marches. And then we split each of those into 12 one-week segments. So right now what we do is we do 2 semesters. There's one in the spring and one in the fall. Each one is 12 weeks long. So that way we have the summer to just focus on competition and parades and stuff like that. Because
Gotcha.
Garden Valley doesn't have any... Well, we started to apply for some grants and stuff, but most of our money is from graduations and parades. So summer gets busy. But so then over the 12 weeks, anybody who shows up, we've got a start date for it, right? And so if they want to show up at a different time, we can say, well, here's, if they show up, if they contact us 4 weeks into the semester, it's like, well, this semester has already started, but don't worry, the next semester will start in a few months. In the meantime, you can come to practice and listen, right? But we're going to follow this schedule, right? This is what we're teaching this night for each of those 3 groups. And that way, I don't know if this is making sense in audio, right? But adding that structure makes it so
that's very similar.
You guys have something
Yeah, it's very similar to what we do.
Yeah.
So we started, basically you have to start either January 1st, May 1st, or September 1st. So 3 4-month semesters with a similar kind of structure of beginner, intermediate, and advanced learners, right? So I've never picked up the practice chanter all the way through. I can play like the scales and most of the doublings. And then like Amazing Grace and the 2/4 set is intermediate, and then I'm going to try to blow up a set of bagpipes and finish out like the parade sets is kind of the advanced class. And similar idea, if somebody calls halfway through a semester, you're like, all right, you can join us in September, or we can set you up with a private teacher in town.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, similar idea, and I would be curious to see your checklist, because I've been developing one of my own, and mostly we teach out of Sandy Jones' book, but I kind of have that checklist that I've got. But I've been trying to put together a little series of YouTube videos to kind of, here's my thoughts on what's really important, and kind of the order that I teach my students, using Sandy Jones' book as a supplement, because he's got a bunch of really good drills and pictures and stuff in there that are
Well, dude, let's
no need to
collab.
duplicate.
I want to see your stuff.
Yeah,
Because ours still says work in progress on the front page. Because when is it ever done, right? So,
right.
I'll show you mine. You show me yours, huh?
Sounds good. Let's trade.
Oh, actually, JD, I was gonna use you for an organic ad too. Can I use you for an organic ad?
Oh, okay.
But
What's the deal?
before we end on the more beautiful and sentimental note with the lovely song that you wrote for your grandma, here's the organic ad. Have you heard of bagpipeswag.com?
I have heard of bagpipeswag.com.
Have you? Now, do you here's an even better opener. Do you have giant boxes full of randomly sized bagpipe band T-shirts and other paraphernalia taking up space in your garage and or shed?
I do.
Do you find that you don't have the time or energy to juggle multiple orders coming in from your band members, from their family members, from random people on the street, and then trying to deliver the shirts from your random boxes to the person in a timely manner?
Absolutely.
Are you tired of the headache that all of this causes?
It is such a pain.
Well, you should try bagpipeswag.com. I probably should have written something out if I wanted to do an organic ad. But then if it was written out, would it be organic? This is the thing that I'm trying to do.
So, I mean, I've seen the website, and literally, actually, I put one of your T-shirts on my Christmas list, so my wife knows something fun to get me.
Oh yeah, I'll send you a discount code.
Okay, good deal. But how does the like if I want my band to be one of the up there next to Garden Valley, do you guys have like a supplier that sources everything automatically and ships it automatically, or
that's
awesome.
So this is the
Sign us
idea.
up.
This is still a work in progress. So let me just put that out there. But in order for the work in progress to like survive, I do need to start getting this out a little bit more. So I'm a little bit of a serial project starter. So basically the idea is this. Imagine, if you will, a farmer's market, but for pipe band merch. And what Bagpipe Swag is this is me going to an empty field and saying, I'm going to rent this field. And then I turn to the farmers, but in this case it's pipe bands and trad bands and pipers and pipe makers and reed makers and anybody else who has anything to do with pipes and drums. And I say, come, my friends, set up your shops here on this field and sell your wares, right? So like the infrastructure of bringing water to the field and providing porta potties and all that kind of stuff, that's what Bagpipe Swag is handling. But we're talking about a website, right? So the web presence, some advertising on social media, the production of the products, the shipping and fulfillment, the order, the e-commerce, right? Card payments, PayPal, all that kind of stuff. That's all being taken care of by Bagpipe Swag. That's the marketplace, right? And so then all you need to do if you have a pipe band is say, I would like to set up a shop there. Come on over, set up a shop. And the whole idea is to take away all the worry about overhead and inventory and everything. So there's no cost to be listed on there or anything like that. Right now, and like I say, this is still I'm still trying it out. But if you go to bagpipeswag.com right now, there are a few categories. One of them is in-house designs. So that's like my little shop that I've set up on there, my little farmer's market stand where I just sell cool bagpipe shirts and stuff that I think are cool anyway. Then there's artists and groups. So that would be stuff like, trad groups, pipe soloists, bagpipe makers, anybody like that who wants to sell stuff. Podcasts as well. Droning On has a shop on there. And then there's pipe bands. And the idea there is competitive pipe bands, right? Right now, Garden Valley, the one that I play for, I've got them set up on there, but I don't have any other pipe bands there. But the space in this field is unlimited. Like, I will take any pipe band. And all I need is your logo and some info for who to send the money to. And the trade-off here, of course, is that, like, with your box of T-shirts, like, I've been the T-shirt guy in the past for my band. That's where this idea came from. Like, because we had a member in our band who had a connection to the local university's print shop, we were able to get T-shirts made at a low cost, right? And so then our net income per shirt, it was like we were able to buy the shirts for like $15, and then we sold them for, well, no, I think we bought them for like $12 and then sold them for $20, right? So our net was like $8 each, right? it wasn't but that doesn't take into account all of my time, right? Fulfilling orders
Right.
and stuff, which just took forever.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
Is if you're at a festival and somebody buys a shirt off you, great. But if you buy too many shirts, you end up with boxes and boxes and boxes taking up space in somebody's garage for
and you end
years.
up with all the odd sizes. Nobody wants the
Exactly.
5XL and the double small and stuff like that.
We've gotten pretty good at ordering somewhere between like 100 and 150 shirts each year in kind of a bell curve of sizes, and that's about what we can sell in a year to a year and a half. So it's better than it has been. But certainly would be nice to have some of those online sales handled automatically.
Well, and that's one of the things too, is that like with the bagpipe swag idea, like a band like yours can still buy the box of shirts and sell them at festivals and stuff like that. It's not like you're giving over exclusive rights to sell your merch on this website. It's just an option. And
That's
so
great. Sign us up.
Deal. The profit that a band can make on this is like, I feel hesitant to say it out loud, but right now it's still about $5 a shirt. The band makes about $5 a shirt, and then Bagpipe Swag keeps whatever the difference is between that $5 and the actual net profit, which is usually between $1 and $4. So it's about $5 to the band, and then about $2.50 on average to Bagpipe Swag, and that covers the SEO and hosting and e-commerce and all that stuff.
How do I sign up?
Yeah, just email me after, man. I'll put notes in the show notes for anybody who's listening who thinks that this sounds like a good idea. I think it is a good idea, but also I've basically pre-purchased this field for 1 year, and if at the year mark I'm only losing money on it, it'll be hard to keep it going. So I've got to get it in front of some people and see if some people want to try it to get it to survive. So
I'll send it out. That sounds good.
All right. Well, I've kept you for a long time, and now I feel selfish because we ended with me making my pitch. So, tell me, do you have a title for this song that we're going to go out on?
Yeah. So the tune I wrote for my grandmother is she grew up in Georgia and then spent most of her life in Texas, and so I called it a Georgia peach and a Texas rose, and it's kind of a bit of a slow air. It's a little P-rocky at times, but it's kind of in a D, and it wanders through some minor keys and stuff. I think it was I had a range of inspirations, but it was fun to work with and write yeah.